$136,101.81. We had expenditures of $577,542.89, and we had revenue of $384,492.60, leaving the balance in the general fund for $7,543.51.52. We did receive some gifts and donations for the Nature Scopes program, and as well from Fairmont, so we appreciate that. For the Land Improvement Fund, we began the month with $3,178,265.88, expenditures of $497.68. Obviously, projects are just beginning. And we had the revenue of $258.63. Therefore, the ending balance for the month is $3,178,026.83. And the retirement reserve account beginning balance was $82,450.09, $3.55 in income, and the ending balance was $82,453.64. Any questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay. We'll move over to the pre-approval purchase requisitions. A smaller list this month. I think a lot of the big spending has been done at this point in the year. Before you have a list of pre-approvals that is a total of $62,897.14. Most notably, there's a $25,000 for a vehicle for a replacement going to be purchased from Junction Auto.
I just had one question. So will that vehicle be in our surplus next month, or will it be rotated to another department? What's the thought pattern?
We'll look at our oldest vehicles in combination with the highest vehicle mileage and decide which one will go either to surplus, or we do have the option, if we can get back blue book value, we do have the option of trading.
Okay, okay.
We will have probably 3 other vehicles next month that will be going to auction that you'll see on the surplus list.
Okay.
And that is for replacements for some of the Ranger vehicles that will be coming in.
Okay. So those are worn out?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody else any questions? So motion to pre-approve.
A motion to approve the summary prepared by Michelle in the amount of $62,897.14 in pre-approval purchase requisitions. Second.
Mrs. Shumway?
Vote yes.
Mr. Wondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
All right, moving on to vouchers for the month of April.
The total amount of vouchers for the month of April, including the payroll, was $578,040.57. Were there any questions on the vouchers themselves?
I did not have any. Did you have any?
Motion.
So we need a motion to approve the vote.
Second.
Mrs. Shumway?
Vote yes.
Mr. Wondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
While I'm up here, I do want to give one quick update, if I could. Mr. Gertz had asked a couple of questions last month. In regards to the insurance and the deductibles, we have an update for you on that. To move from a $500 deductible to a $1,000 deductible, the savings would only be $485, so we don't feel it's worth it. And we also did get some information back on hunting in the parks, and although we had looked into it previously, we had a very specific question regarding the liability if someone was hunting our park and they did damage to another person's building, or if they hurt themselves on our park while hunting. And we did receive an answer from our insurance agency on that as well. And if the hunters are considered volunteers for us during that time, which we probably should be having them fill out volunteer forms, so we'll add that, make sure that gets added into the process this year. Then they would be covered underneath our volunteer policy if they get injured on our parks. And as far as if the property is damaged on another park, it would not be covered in our insurance plan. So there's a few notes that we probably want to make sure we include in our hunter plan. I just want to give you those updates.
Did she answer? Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay.
I appreciate you checking that out. I'm a little surprised. Normally that number is bigger.
Right, moving on, unfinished business. Robin, if you could come up and give us an update you recall, we presented earlier in the year when we only had 2 park commissioners, a proposal for our part-time people, our people that work year-round, that have pretty significant tenure with the organization, to have a vacation benefit. So we're putting that back in front of you for consideration, so we can move it forward and put it to vote.
As John said,
The board did table it at that time.
there you go. That's how I was going to open it. It was tabled in February, and that's why we're coming back to talk about it again. The vacation policy that was submitted to you has two areas of change. The first one is a simple housekeeping. On the back page or page 2, I'm not sure how it was copied for you. The minimum use needs to change to 2-hour block minimums, because that's, as we're using it now, especially those that have 10-hour schedules, they need to use that 2 hours on vacation days that are only worth 8. And so that's kind of a housekeeping issue. But secondly, at this time, our part-time employees do not accrue vacation. Only our full-time employees do. Before we proposed this revised vacation guideline, John and I met. I've also discussed it with the management team to consider what we wanted to accomplish by changing this. We discussed pros and cons, and I bring to you this request after all these discussions. First, I wanted to share some information about our part-time staff that perhaps Jeff needs to know because he's new to the table. Part-time employees help make up 18% of our Geauga Park District staff. They are as important to GPD, of course, as any of the other full-time staff, and have the ability to step in when we need them the most. They are more flexible. They can fill in for other staff members. Recently, we had an employee, a part-time employee, who had a death in the family and was gone for 2 weeks. It was other part-time staff that stepped in, and so they're very valuable to us. Their tenure span from less than a year to 10 years. They've had the same job descriptions as their full-time counterparts, although we do have 2 part-time employees that are the only ones in their positions, that is graphic designer and volunteer coordinator. There are no full-time equivalent for that. At both the nature centers that we have, the Westwoods and here, our visitors are graded by our part-time staff. They answer the questions. They're the first person our visitors see, so they are the window to our park district. So you can tell I value our park district staff, and full-time or part-time. Because of the Affordable Health Care Act, we've had to limit the hours that they work. If they average 30 hours or more, if you listen to the news and know the law, we must provide health care. So we're very cautious, and we monitor weekly the hours that they work. So both the managers and myself keep a close eye on this, because we don't want any surprises in the next year having to offer benefits to persons that we were not expecting to offer them to. At present, we have 10 part-time employees with an 11th position that remains open. We have 3 positions in operations. That's where the 1 vacancy remains. We have 4 part-timers in administration. They are front desk secretaries. We have 2 in communications, the graphic designer and the volunteer coordinator and special events assistant. We have 1 part-time NRM land steward, and we have 1 part-time naturalist. So what benefits do they currently have? They accrue sick time based on the hours worked and on a formula that's defined in the Ohio Revised Code. These hours can accumulate without a cap, so they can accrue sick time, and it's always there if they need it. They also receive 12 hours of personal leave annually. However, this does not accumulate. It cannot be banked from year to year. It has to be used or transferred into sick time at the end of the year, or we pay it out at the end of the year also. So it goes away and then it comes back. For a part-time employee to take time away on vacation, they typically sacrifice work hours, i.e. they go without pay. As detailed in the policy revision before you, if offered to our part-time employees, they would accrue at a prorated rate as described and formulated in ORC. They would accrue with a formula based on their years of service and the hours that they work per pay period. Those with 1 through 7 years of service, 8 of the 10 that we have here would accrue 48 hours a year or 2 weeks vacation according to their schedule. Those with 8 to 15, and we have 2 of those, would accrue 72 hours or 3 weeks vacation a year based on a 24-hour work week. I'll add here, county employees that are part-time do accrue vacation. I have surveyed in the past other park districts, and I have received surveys from other park districts. About 50% offer vacation. It may not be called vacation, it might be called personal time or PTO, but they do they have some kind of time off for their part-time employees. So any questions that I can add to the conversation or answer for you?
This is permanent part-time, not seasonal part.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you, Robin. I reviewed this, and of course, I had some comments to make before. I agree with your changes, and it's much more palatable as far as I'm concerned.
I make a motion that we approve this change in policy as discussed by Ms. Blarczyk and is set forth in this draft that she has set forth before us, sections 411.1 and 411.2.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Shumway?
Vote yes.
Mr. Warndorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Thank you, Robert. Next up is call your attention to the Bass Lake Club Agreement, which will expire in July. And as you see in my memo here, my recommendation is to wait. Mr. Foster, the president of the Bass Lake Club Association, couldn't be here today, but he'll be in June. But at this time, I'd like to request that you consider the item of an EPA deadline on the removal of recreational amenities at Bass Lake, and their request to meet an August 15th deadline.
So we're going to table it until June is what I'm hearing.
Well, I'm asking for the sake,
We have sort of two different issues.
correct, that's correct.
One is, should we continue our agreement with the Bass Lake Club? The second is, how do we bring ourselves into compliance?
That's correct, Mr.
Well,
Warren.
our agreement extended to them until
July.
July 31st, correct? And EPA is looking at August 1st,
August 15th.
15th.
For the sake of some of the other maintenance and construction operations issues, I would like to, I've been dealing with EPA for quite a while, on these removal of recreational amenities. I'd like to go ahead and move that forward for a vote, if we could.
It doesn't look like to me that they're very happy with us after reviewing the new contract.
Ohio EPA's claim was that we violated the environmental covenant that we have with Ohio EPA for Bass Lake by installing recreational amenities. And so they're asking that we remove that. They've been pretty lenient in that regard over the course of the last year to 9 months. So I guess what I'm saying is I hate to keep them waiting.
I guess my question would be then, just so that we're transparent here, that if we're removing recreational amenities because it's a preserve, we should be removing all recreational amenities because it's a preserve, correct?
Well,
Everything.
At least we want to remove the ones that are objectionable according to the letter that we received. There were 3 specific things that were identified as use restrictions. It does not appear that that there's concern by EPA other than those 3 specific things. So perhaps as an interim measure, we could address those 3 things, and then we could at a later date address whatever other concerns might be appropriate for the management of that particular reserve. Can you accept that, John?
I can't this time, yes.
There was a question I had for you about what you referenced as enrolling an additional 3 acres.
Yes.
And I gathered that you have spent some time addressing that possibility. Can you talk about that at all?
That's correct. They've given us the option of either removing the recreational amenities or enrolling an additional 3 acres in the environmental covenant. It would be enrolled as part of the Bass Lake Environmental Covenant, but we don't readily have 3 acres available in the Bass Lake area. And as I went out in my memo, I would hate to tie future board or future staff to an environmental covenant maybe 20, 30, 50 years from now on an arbitrary 3 acres somewhere else in the county. So, and there seems to be some disagreement with the recreational amenities installed at Bass Lake. And to be honest with you, EPA is right at that particular park, that they should have not been installed in the first place. It's just something that we did last year and we overlooked. So,
Is there any adjacent real estate that could answer?
We could take another look, but I'm not aware of any.
Along the shoreline on either one side or the other, or
It would, we tried to enroll some land that was purchased separately at a property called Woody Brook, and they denied it because it was in another environmental covenant program or a conservation easement program. So it would have to be privately held, and we would have to purchase 3 acres. To find a landowner, and we've been trying to find one between now and August 15th to sell us 3 acres, we can make another attempt at it.
what's your estimate of time for the removal of sand, the volleyball apparatus, the bocce ball apparatus? And how long will all that stuff take for the staff?
The volleyball,
Day or 2. Do you agree with that, Brad? 3?
So we might have a little bit more wiggle room before we have to.
If we do everything, you're looking at least a week.
Okay.
all you have left is horseshoe pits and tetherball.
We have volleyball,
Well, it's a pit, but there's no volleyball net up, correct?
yes, it is up for.
Oh, it got put back up? Okay.
I would, speaking for myself, I would be very interested to see if we could get what is referenced as a replacement parcel.
Okay.
To at least explore that possibility.
Okay. All right. Well, we can table it for now. That'll give me another 30 days to inquire about additional 3 acres in the Bass Lake area. Perhaps there's something privately held, and then we'll take a look.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll table it for now.
And then, Mr. Foster, as you indicated, is still planning on coming to the meeting in June.
He is.
Thank you.
All right, next item of business, if Matt has any updates on park development projects.
So for the park development updates, in addition to the overall division update, we just got started on all the projects. So you have in your board packet an update of all the original contracts and where projects are at this point. Since we just got started, actually, Throwing Meadows just got underway on Friday. So it's pretty early on in all of them. But if you have any questions on any of the projects specifically, I can answer those. The Headwaters Park improvement reallocation, that is, as you can see in my summary, since we did not do the playground at Headwaters, we have a balance of $82,000 in the construction capital improvements fund. What I'm asking is to reallocate $31,478 from that item into the Headwaters Shelter project. That will basically bring us up to a 10% contingency for the construction of the shelter. Anytime we're dealing with renovation of an existing building, there's always a possibility that we're going to run into unforeseen things. So it would just give us our normal contingency in our projects and deal with anything that comes up during the construction of the shelter.
Matt, can you back up the tape a little bit? And I know this is probably going back over some stuff that we've talked about before with the plans that have been approved and so forth. But can you briefly address the handicap, what the handicap accessibility will be at Ferrari after these improvements are completed?
The building will be accessible, yes. The current shelter is accessible, and the new renovations, it will also be accessible.
There is no step,
There's no
correct?
step.
So it's a ramp up to the concrete
Yes,
floor.
Yep, it'll all be able to level.
And are there any changes that are being made to the walk that surrounds the wetland area?
We are putting in a boardwalk, which is being done by our construction crew. That will be off of the existing trail. From the trail to the boardwalk, it will be a new asphalt trail, so that will be accessible to opposite the boardwalk. It's the
It's all
boardwalk,
one
yes,
thing.
yes.
And the width of the boardwalk, or excuse me, the access, all that stuff is the same as the existing circular path?
Yes.
And you, I gather, are perfectly content with the accessibility issue with regard to those improvements?
Yes, and I'm unaware of any issues that we've had in the past.
No, I guess I only wondered about, when you got that boardwalk out over the water or the swampy areas, I wouldn't want to have anybody fall off into the mud.
The boardwalk does have,
Rim.
it has curbing, so there's basically a 4-inch gap, which is code, and then we'll have a 4x4,
You gotta be moving,
bumper. So yes, that is compliant with code for
And there's
accessibility.
enough room to turn?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Evan. Do you want us a motion
Yeah.
for the reallocation?
So yeah, for the reallocation, I would need a motion.
I so move that we reallocate $31,478 from the playground at Headwaters Park to the land improvement fund. Is that what you're asking?
correct?
That's correct. Thank you. Mrs. Shelley?
Vote yes.
Mr. Wondorf?
Yes.
Mr. Gertz?
Yes.
Thank
The firm, in terms of the plans that were developed for the boardwalk and the access to it, we had somebody check out and make sure that it was ADA compliant.
Yes, both those projects ended up being designed by Peninsula Architects. They were the award on the RFP for both those projects. They're an architectural firm, and they handled all the engineering, architectural, and made sure we're in compliance with building codes and ADA accessibility.
Great,
And we did receive all our permitting from the state of Ohio as far as our building permits.
thank you very much. Nice job.
Okay.
you. All right, moving on to new business, the Nassau Station Restoration Project proposal. This probably takes up about 30 of your packets.
I was gonna say, so there's quite a bit of information in there. This project, I brought before the board just to kind of give you an update of where we're at. This is actually a project that we've been working on at the Park District since 2009. And just because I know this was reviewed last year, but I did include everything in there. Basically in 2009, we went out with RFP for restoration for architectural and engineering services on the Nassau Station building, which is part of Observatory Park. We hired Westlake Reed at the time, and they came up with the drawing set that you see in there for restoring the building, and also bringing the building up to a point where we could hold public programs in the building. And part of that scope was designing sort of a reception exhibit area in the lower part of the building, having some historical interpretive areas to kind of capture the historical value of the facility. This was basically a place that Case Western Reserve used throughout 1950s through the early 2000s for research and astronomy. So that was part of the initial work done in 2009 and 10. In 2014, the board at that time asked us to go back to Westlake Reed, and we had them update the drawings. Building codes are always updated constantly every couple of years. So they went back through, updated the drawings to meet current building codes. Also at that time, it was asked to add flush toilets and restrooms to the facility. Again, thinking of as we used it for programming with our naturalists and that, when we bring in school groups or larger groups to have the ability to accommodate those. So that was done last year. Also part of that was updating the overall cost of the project. Obviously, every year that a project doesn't get constructed, with the cost of things that goes up, which they've done. Currently, we are working through finalizing the drawings for the septic system and everything. And we're currently working for permitting. The reason we're looking at this now is based on the permitting. We really need to look at, if we are going to move forward with this project, ideally the timetable would be bidding it and doing construction next year in 2016. We just recently had a meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee out at Observatory Park, And we've also updated some costs for the interpretive plan that our naturals have put together. So when you see the breakdown on sheet 51, I'm kind of breaking it into 3 different parts. The initial is the cost of the actual construction of the renovations to the building itself. The second item is the improvement of the parking lot. The current parking area is very small, so we would actually be expanding the parking lot to accommodate visitors, and also if we have school groups coming through to accommodate buses and that sort of thing.
This is 51, right?
51, sorry. Yes. The summary.
Yeah.
And then the last items are basically, once the facility is updated, this is a unique facility. The telescope itself is actually one of the largest research telescopes in the area. And it does need some work, so you can see in there the restoration of the telescope itself. Also, the current computer system running the telescope is pretty antiquated and dated. So we have some upgrades for the computer system to actually use the telescope. And then the final project is actually developing sort of the exhibit area based on our naturalist management plan. So as we bring the public through there, there would be some information about the history of astronomy in Northeast Ohio. It's a rich history with the connection with NASA, Glenn, and astronomy in Northeast Ohio. There is a lot of history there that our nationals have put together, kind of a neat interpretive plan to kind of highlight those things. And really what it does is kind of creates sort of a unique, it's already a unique park, but it adds to it having another kind of neat element on that campus at the park there to kind of highlight astronomy in Northeast Ohio.
The other thing I'd like to bring to Jeff's attention, just in case you're unaware of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but Geauga Park Foundation has donated $750,000 towards this project. So it will be a 50-50 match, more or less, on the project, correct, John?
So I understand you committed to some percent.
Yes, that's correct. They've committed to raising $775,000. We're vested in this project. I talked to Matt.
We've already invested $75,000 in architectural and engineering fees to get us to this point. So you can see where we're at. We're at about $1.4 million.
Which is great, we brought it in less than what we thought. Do you need a motion then for us to go ahead and have you bid?
Well, at this time, I would need a motion to bid. That would probably be, I would say, later in the year. But at this time, really, as we prepare for projects for next year, I just really need to know if the board is committed to this project, I guess. So that's more for this.
Right, I would prefer a motion to go ahead and make plans to commit to construction in 2016, if you can make that motion.
That's what I thought.
It's a big project. There are a number of commitments
It's
to
a
the
big-
foundation.
So we're committing to no more than $800,000, correct? With your 10%?
Well, we would commit to a budget of $1.4 million.
Yeah, let's commit to
Okay.
that. While
Okay.
the foundation has committed to raising $775,000, we have about 600 of that cash on hand, so we're committing to that budget, as Matt said.
Okay,
So,
We'll look at some portion of this, and I'm sorry, I don't have,
that's
the
okay.
printing on this material is very small. Is there some portion of this map that will be constructed by our in-house staff?
So really, in the breakdown, the first portion would be more of the contract construction.
Are you looking at page 51 again?
51 again. So I would say the first 2 items would definitely go out under contract. When we get into the bottom items, some of that possibly could be in-house. The actual restoration of the telescope is going to be a very unique contract. There's really maybe a handful of companies around the country that could do that type of work. So that's why those items below, I'd anticipate those might be broken out into separate contracts. But overall, the budget for the project would be.
Do we need to improve accessibility to the construction site in order to facilitate the construction of, and the renovations to the building itself?
As far as the parking lot?
Yes,
Yes.
and this driveway.
Yes, we definitely do that. Right now, it's kind of a 1-car wide driveway that goes back to maybe a parking area that